originally thought that it would be possible to do both things, but I really did. It wasn't that I got exhausted, although I did, but since I live in a state of almost permanent exhaustion, that doesn't bother me very much. But the thing is, what did bother me was that I didn't feel that I was really, truly a member of the National Theatre Company, because every spare moment I had, I was out of the building or on the phone or going to, off to wonderful, exciting places like Belgium with the blues band. And I thought, well, no, it's a good time now to chuck it in anyway.
Because you also chucked in Manfred Mann when they were riding very, very high. And there isn't perhaps some other reason, maybe you get a bit bored after...
Well, yes, I actually do have this kind of boredom threshold with bands that I'm in. It obviously seems to be about three and a half years. I mean, I was 3.5 years with the Manfred Mann group, although actually I'd been trying to get out of it for a lot longer than that.
Really?
But it took me 11 months to get out of the band, while they were searching for Mike Darbo. It wasn't until they found him that I was allowed to go. But again, with the blues band, after some 3.5 years, I must confess that I was sort of thinking in terms of new things rather than staying.
How did you fall into rock and roll? Because your background's not the same as Roger's.
Lonnie Donegan.
Lonnie Donegan again?
Yes,
He has a lot to answer for.
He certainly does. I didn't actually have this instant excitement when I first encountered Presley. I thought Heartbreak Hotel was a very sort of enjoyable record, but I was kind of more into jazz than I was into popular music at the time, and...
Sort of snob, really?
No, nothing of the kind. I just really liked that stuff, that's all. I'd heard it when I was sort of 14 and really was very enthusiastic about it. But Lonnie Donegan seemed to me to sort of bridge the gap between the music that, well, all sorts of music, really. Skiffle was a wonderful sort of amalgam of jazz and popular and all that sort of stuff.
Because I always think of you as being a great blues man. That's your roots.
Well, it was directly because of Donegan that I got into that, because I mean those were his, a lot of the blues singers were his influences, people like Bessie Smith and Huddie Ledbetter and so on. I mean, and I kept hearing Donegan sort of in interviews talking about Leadbelly. I thought, there cannot really be a man called Leadbelly. His real name was Ledbetter, and he was a wonderful singer and guitarist, and I went out and bought the first Leadbelly record. It wasn't a blues record at all, it was Goodnight Irene, actually. But it had a sort of blues thing on the other side. And from there, I just got into Big Bill Broonzy and T-Bone Walker and all that sort of stuff, and after that, I was finished, really.
Why should a sort of fairly small collection of black blues singers, mainly from Chicago, have had such an enormous influence on British popular music?
Well, I think it was because...
rather than any other ethnic group somewhere else in the world.
Well, when I was about ready to start sort of being in a group, which was about 62, popular music had really got incredibly dull, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, all that wonderful excitement that you had with Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard and Chuck Berry, that had all been dissipated. It was now your Fabians and your Frankie Avalons and all those stuff. I know they're all your favourites.
Ricky Nelson.
Ricky Nelson. Well, yes, even Ricky Nelson. I mean, they'd taken some of the sort of emotional directness and strength out of rock. And
mainly they couldn't sing. That was
well, there could have been something about it, but they had prettified it. Yeah. And that's what appealed to me and really hundreds of white English kids like me. The blues had this absolute raw emotional power which bypassed any kind of cultural upbringing you may have had and just went, cop hold of that. And we just said, lovely, that's the music, and we started to play it.
Did you feel that, Roger, that, you know, when you were starting...
Very much so.
Things were in rather a bad way? It was your duty to...
There was even a song called This Pullover that you gave to me. Do you remember that? Oh,
This Pullover that you gave to me.
I mean, that's when things are really bad.
But do you find, Paul, that the satisfaction you got from acting is that which you got from the first exciting days of rock and roll?
Well, it's impossible to compare the two things because, you know, it's only the good bits of either of them that are good.
Yes.
When you're doing Guys and Dolls, and you get to the end...
In that suit, wasn't it?
Oh, well, it's not quite this suit, no, this is my own... This is almost the real thing, folks, here. When you get to the end of... Actually, at the end of Guys and Dolls, I'm wearing a Salvation Army suit, giving the game away there. But you get to the end of that thing, and there's this lovely sort of fantasy tap dance routine with the entire company, and the audience is just having such fun. And the people on stage are having such fun. It's like a great blues band gig, actually, the sensation. But then, of course, not everything is like that.
Do you think that you'll, in fact, get back to music, perhaps with the group again in 5 years' time, and do a 3.5-year stretch?
I was virtually 10 years out of rock and roll between Manfred Mann and the Blues. Well, between the end of my solo career, really, which is in sort of... Actually, that tour with you finished my solo career. I came back from that tour, and I said, there must be something else I can do for a living. And that was when the phone rang, and it was Charles Marowitz, and he said, come to the open space and do a show for 12 quid a week, which was... and I did, and I got into the theatre, and it was 10 years later that I formed the blues band. So it probably, you know, I just would really be too old to carry on from what Roger was saying earlier. I really would be too old then.
But you've both got...
You can't be 51-year-old rock and roll.
Why not?
Actually, it's ridiculous, because I have
That's
always
what I'm
said...
hoping for. I'm still my first hit.
I've always said that it was silly to think in those terms, because, I mean, I'm primarily, even though I've spent most of my time, as far as music is concerned, doing popular music, I mean, it's pop music in the English sense, I'm primarily a blues man still, really, and after all, they go on forever. Sonny Boy Williamson only owned up to being 80 when he was, or actually he owned up to being 75 when he was dead. He was going strong. Playing Muddy Waters is 65, 66 this year, and he's wonderful. I don't see why one shouldn't go on playing music.
You've both got kids who are now almost as old as you were when you got into the business. Do they want to go into the business, or would you encourage them?
Well, out of my two, the older one, who's now 19, is actually rehearsing in a band. I don't know how seriously he takes it. He was in a band before. He told me about it. He said, we've got our first gig on Saturday week. Can you come? And I was working, of course. But it was in Southend. And I saw him on the Sunday, and I said, how'd the gig go? He said, the band's broken up. The band actually broke up during the first gig.
Must have been exciting.
It was, legendary band. Actually, it's going to be one of those bands that gets written about, you know. But yes, he's back in a group and writing the lyrics for it and rehearsing and all that sort of stuff.
Haven't you got a
Yes,
son of
I've got one of
rock
18
age?
who's not interested at all, which I'm very pleased about. He's not going to give me all the headaches that I gave my father.
Why do you think that rock acts, even the ones that get to the top, don't seem to stay there as long these days? I mean, it seems that you guys are around forever, whereas people who get to the top, I mean, I love Duran Duran, but I have a nasty feeling they've peaked this week, almost. I mean,
it was about 4 o'clock on Wednesday, wasn't it?
it's like Adam and the Ants. I mean, they're all really good, but the media devours people so quickly.
But there are other groups underpinning that kind of front line. I mean, groups like The Clash, who I think will be around for a very long time.
Yes, so do I.
It's just the front liners. It's always been the same with Bay City Rollers.
Yeah, but
Actually, I think you mentioned, I mean, I think Adam could very well still be here in 20
yes,
years.
I think.
I hope he is,
I think
yes.
he's somebody who's... what I sort of feel about this is that it does seem that nowadays there are fewer people who have some kind of rock star quality than there were in his day. I mean, there just aren't the sort of, the Jaggers and stuff. When the Pistols came out, I said, oh, there's one.
Yes.
Johnny Rotten.
Right.
But what's he up to now?
No,
Not a lot.
But you see, I
Well,
wonder
you
if...
believe what they were writing about him.
Yes.
It's a fatal
Anyway,
mistake.
listen,
It is the fatal mistake.
I must cut you two old men off reminiscing, because...
Let's go over to the pub and have a jar.
But I would like to thank you very much for gracing my last show with your wit, charm, and joie de vivre. And if you can stagger to the bar afterwards, we'll continue this conversation off camera. Paul Jones, Roger Daltrey.